Hey everybody. So last time I talked about Ozempic. I don't think I mentioned what is it, Wegovy. The title was utterly clickbaity. Starving with Ozempic. People are losing weight with Ozempic, and a point that I made last time was that it's not an all-you-can-eat. Eat all you want and not get fat drug. It's a you don't want to eat drug. If you eat more than just a little bit, you're going to get sick. And so the weight loss mechanism is like fasting, and fasting comes with other effects other than just weight loss, and some of those effects are emotional and cognitive. And so I was wondering what will be the long-term effects now. But something else that was in the Exponential View newsletter was these drugs are GLP-1 drugs, and they don't just affect your metabolism. That people who start taking like Ozempic, some of them report using social media less, which is clearly has nothing to do with caloric intake. It has something to do with the reward mechanisms in your brain. And some other GLP-1 drug is now being tested as an Alzheimer's treatment. And anything that will arrest the accelerated decay of cognitive capacity from Alzheimer's will likely, it seems intuitive anyway, would be useful in staving off the slower and what we now consider to be natural cognitive decline that just comes from aging. And anything that can do that, it's a slippery slope and a fine line, or perhaps it's a gray area. I guess it's a gray area between therapy, like remediation of some symptom, and improvement over the standard baseline. So lots of people who don't have attention hyperactivity deficit disorder, they still take Ritalin because it keeps them focused at work. It is a cognitive enhancer. Now, for the sorts of things that I do, I mean, maybe on the snowmaking job it might have been helpful, but for anything having to do with writing or creative thought, I find that stimulant drugs, anything more powerful than caffeine, is a hindrance, not a benefit. But who knows? There could be all kinds of drugs coming down the pike, which might actually be creativity enhancing. What I wanted to get around to was we have a desire. When we hear about celebrities all getting super skinny, if I put out a video saying that, hey, these people are all going to starve to death, or there's going to be some unforeseen side effect of these drugs that the side effects don't become apparent until you've been on it for a decade or something like that. And, these people are all going to starve to death, or they're going to die early, or there's going to be some awful mishap that comes from their extended use of these drugs. The flip side of that is that, the drugs are getting better all the time. And while the approval process here in the United States, to bring a new drug to market is very expensive and very time consuming, there are places in the world where it is much cheaper and much shorter. And if you are wealthy, you can just fly to some other country, to some luxurious spa and get the most, the cutting edge health treatments, which won't be approved for normal people in your home country for a decade or more. So there's a double edge to that. It could be that the rich people that we love to think are going to end up, somehow bitten by this snake. They might not, but it could be that in going to pursue, the most cutting edge technologies, they do in fact, they grow a second head or whatever. I mean, that's not what's going to happen. But when you're messing with your neurological reward centers, when you're taking drugs to enhance neuroplasticity, who knows? Who knows what the failure modes are when you're messing with your brain? But at the same time, it could be, we have to admit that having a bunch of money does make for a better life, and it might make for a longer life. It might make for, a longer health span. And it could be that, if these drugs, I think there will be a mix of casualties and also just dramatic success cases that come from people going abroad to get therapies and drugs and other things that are just not available to them in their home countries. Of course, that said, if you've got enough money, you don't have to fly to the other side of the world. You can bring the other side of the world to you. You know, laws are meant to contain and control the behavior of poor people, little people. You know, they're not meant to inhibit the pleasure seeking or the health seeking or the beauty seeking or the status seeking or whatever of the elites. You know, that's not what laws are for. I remember when I lived in New York and I hung out with some people, like Burning Man type people, who they were plugged into the so-called research chemical, what is it, a subculture, I guess. And this is, you know, people with a knowledge of chemistry and access to equipment can create things, you know, can create novel molecules which have psychoactive effects, often psychedelic effects, but, you know, because they are novel, they have not been scheduled by the DEA. They have not been added to the scheduling of the Controlled Substances Act. And so, you know, they're perfectly legal, or if not perfectly legal, legal enough that people are not prosecuted for taking them. So because people have an interest in psychedelics and because people have an interest in not going to prison, there is this motivation to continuously tinker with the molecular structure of chemicals that people ingest, you know, hoping to achieve a certain mental experience or emotional experience or, you know, trans biological experience. And the motivation to look slim and young is orders of magnitude greater. You know, the demand is orders of magnitude greater than the demand for novel psychedelics. So now that the mechanism, you know, the GLP-1 drug mechanism for appetite suppression is known, I think Wegovy and Ozempic, nobody's going to be talking about them in a couple of years because they will have moved on to something far more effective. What? I don't know, you know, but I think it's a Chinese company that is working on a combination of drugs which not only suppresses your appetite, but also causes your body to hold on to muscle mass while it is dropping body fat so that you don't end up with so-called Ozempic butt, you know, which results when not just the body fat that was holding your skin in a particular shape, but also the underlying muscle wastes away because you're not eating. So I think there's going to be rapid evolution in this category of drugs, particularly, of course, you know, hastened by adding AI to the process of the exploration of design space in terms of, you know, various molecules that we can inject into our bodies. So I think we're going to get some really dramatic improvements and effects such that this is kind of an unrelated leap, and I should have been speaking more quickly if I was going to cover this in the same video, but the same Accelerated View roundup of news articles was talking about psychological, like cultural psychological changes that will come from a diminishing birth rate. And one of those will be a reluctance on the part of a culture to send their young men and women off to war to be killed or maimed. And that will enhance or feed into the motivation to, you know, accelerate the move to automated warfare. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future. But imagine this. Imagine, in addition to declining birth rates, leaving us with these distorted demographic structures, what if we've got a whole bunch of old people who aren't doing much of anything, and you can offer them a deal? It's like, hey, we've got this whole suite of, you know, of medical treatments which will sharpen your mind, get your joints supple again, put on the muscle, take off the fat, make your skin tight. You won't necessarily be 19, but in a lot of ways you will, you know, have the resilience, the physical resilience that you had at age 19. This is way out of your price range, but if you want to sign up for 6 years active duty in the military, you know, that's part of the deal. Like, you go to boot camp in a wheelchair or with a walker or whatever, and you come out able to do 100 push-ups and run 10 miles and, you know, basically be a young man or woman in the prime of life who's just come out of several months of intensive physical training, including combat training. And then, you know, you've got companies of 60, 70, 80-year-old men and women shipping off to foreign locations, you know, to fight their country or their empire's wars, while the precious young people are kept coddled at home, you know, and never asked to do anything psychologically strenuous, you know, or psychologically taxing. But you've got a bunch of old people who not only, you know, endured life before safetyism, but also endured old age, and then they've taken the devil's bargain and they've said, okay, make me the equivalent of young and vital again, and I'll go off and fight. Imagine that scenario. Okay, I'm out. Read my Substack. Catch you later.